It's nice to be here. What a beautiful room. You know, I used to be in a different life. I was a student of theology. And this is a bit like a church. So if you wish, you can come up and give your life to the God of mobile later, if you so desire. But anyway, let's get to the point. You know, I changed the title of my presentation because as I was preparing, I was realizing the future of mobile is really the future of everything. Because right now, you know, everything is mobile, basically. And I mean, by the way, I'm wearing invisible Google glasses, so I can see your tweets. Ask Gerd, A-S-K-G-E-R-D. I can see your tweets and monitor them inside, as many people have talked about already today. So, what does a futurist do? It's really quite simple. I try to recognize patterns in what is going on today, and basically take a look and lengthen them out into 5 years and work backwards. So we're looking at scenarios 3 to 5 years from now and saying, okay, if this happens, what do we have to do today to make this work, to get ready for the future? Because, you know, as you know, the world is speeding up like an express train, and many things that are bound to happen in 3 to 5 years, we don't really have time to prepare as much as we used to. For example, in the car industry, it used to take 5 years for the next car, and then it got cut down to 2 years, and now it's 13 months for the next edition of the car to roll out. Everything is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. We're doing this work for many companies around the world, including Google, YouTube, and Sony, and many others, to essentially get them ready for the future. So I want to start on a positive note. Business as usual is dead. And this has a lot of implications. Business as usual means, for example, companies having control of their customers, controlling distribution like record labels, controlling distribution like movie companies, also banks having control of our money, not much we could do with that. Basically what's happening because of mobile internet, broadband, wireless, cheap devices, is that business as usual is over. When you're at the airport checking in, you can use a flight tracker app and you will know more about the flight that's departing than the woman at the gate. We're talking about empowerment, mind-boggling. So for a lot of companies, this is not a good thing, right? Because companies are thinking, you know, this is cool for us as a consumer, but as a company, that's bad news. And worst of all, if you're in marketing, people will completely ignore you unless they like you. Wow, what kind of reality is that? You know, this has been our personal reality for a long time, but now it's actually happening to advertisers. In other words, if people don't want to hear from you, you don't exist. And this is so true on mobile. I mean, we're seeing this whole trend. You know, this is the PayPal inauguration in 2005, the upper image, you know, where people had a couple of mobile devices, but here in 2013, everybody has a mobile. Think about this 5 years into the future, you know, 50 popes later, just kidding, he'll be around for longer than that. In 2013, in 2018, nobody will have anything in their hands because guess what? It's just there. Scary thought. This device is a device called the Nest, a thermostat that connects your house electricity and water use, your appliances, utilities, to a mobile phone app and the internet and Facebook, if you so wish, to help you save energy. This amazing device basically monitors everything that you do at home, and then you can share with others, and there's calculations showing that this device would help people to save 40% of energy in their houses if everybody had it. Now there's discussions about mandating smart meters. You can sit in your car on the way home and change the air condition to the iPhone app. Now that is useful, not as useful as a twittering plant or a horse that talks to you through Twitter, you know, like other people have shown. Right? So think about this. I mean, smart technology could have the same effect on global warming than turning over to renewable energies. The same effect. So in other words, if we turn to renewable energy and we use smart technology to reduce consumption, make it more efficient, we can solve this global warming problem. So there's a very large effect. If you're seeing what's happening now, it's been discussed many times today, the Internet of Things, the Internet of Everything. Now this is truly mind-boggling and also very scary, clearly. And we've heard responses to that effect today. Ericsson says we're now moving into the second phase, networked industries, and then the third wave, networked everything, what they call also, like I do, the networked society. Now, there's some significant things that are happening here. For example, these guys from Libelium. I mean, this slide is overwhelming. Clearly, you can download it somewhere on the web. Just look for Libelium. Everything they're doing here is basically saying the entire energy and transportation business can be made smart with mobile devices and sensors. And this is a revolution that's worth trillions of dollars a year. So this is all happening now here as we sit here. And this is our problem, as Ray Kurzweil has pointed out many times, even though I don't agree on many other things he's saying, but there's a lot of things to learn from him. Our world is exponential. I mean, have you noticed that when you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's linear. That's what humans do. You know, we get gradually along. Exponential means 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, and on from there. And our problem as humans is that we can't actually understand when things change in huge leaps like they do now. We're actually now at a place to where we can say we are at 4, and the next is 8, not 5. So if you're sitting here today with your company looking at what mobile means for you or marketing, we're not talking about a gradual shift next year. We're talking about another exponential jump to 8. And what this will do for your bottom line, that's our blind spot. So as humans, we can't be exponential unless you're Ray Kurzweil, maybe. We can't be exponential because we have human limits. We're not machines. We can improve this, but only marginally. But technology is jumping. And after 8 is 16. That's only 32 months, you know, every 18 months from now. Some of the stuff you've seen today sounds like pure science fiction. The idea of having data find you and being monitored, and your car being monitored, and having a public self-driving sharing car, mind-boggling. So what that means for us as companies or here today, we have to take leaps. We have to take more leaps than ever before. And I live in Switzerland, and let me tell you one thing, Swiss people don't like this idea. Right? They like to wait. I was in Luxembourg yesterday. They also like to wait. Right? But let's take a look what happened here. You know, with Apple, half of Apple's revenue, the iPhone, didn't exist 6 years ago. The Kindle universe that Amazon, Jeff Bezos built, didn't exist 6 months ago. Look, see how they developed? LinkedIn, the revenues of LinkedIn, $800 million. When I got started on LinkedIn, people were saying, why in the world are you inviting me for this online bullshit? Right? Who wants to share information with people? And look what happened here. Didn't exist until just recently. So the bottom line is a majority of your revenues in 2018 are very likely to come from things that don't exist today. And when you're facing this reality, you have to face one thing. If you don't invent something today to be there tomorrow, you're losing half your revenue. It's gone. If you're lucky. Well, this is a lucky view. Right? So innovation based on all these technologies is crucial, and I think it also means that with the end of protected spaces. Again, living in Switzerland, you know, our banking laws are just right now crumbling. Luxembourg announced yesterday, I think, that they're going to have automatic transfer of bank data. Talk about the lack of protected spaces. The music business, bubble doesn't exist anymore, thankfully. So the end of protected spaces, whatever you think that you are protected because you know something better, forget it. That's not the reality. Protection does not exist by virtue of having a protective factor like bank secrecy, right? Or a distribution agreement or whatever we used to have to protect us. Basically what's happening now is that because of the consumerization of IT, the fact that we have more power in our hands than the president of the US 15 years ago, more data, more technology. The consumerization basically means that we're now forced to face this disruption first in media, banking, telecom, money, medical, pharma. Each of those, trillion-dollar business. This is a huge opportunity for all of you coming up with new business models. I mean, it couldn't be in a better place. All of these guys, every single corporation, every single startup and company and industry organization is going to look to reinvent in the next 5 years. Because this is what we're seeing as a global trend. So, mobile broadband Now, a global phenomenon, we're going to have 5.2 billion people online in less than 5 years. 68% of the global population of 8 billion. And those are, of course, not here. They're in the BRIC countries, in the civets, and whatever you want to call them. But basically what's happening here is that mobile broadband is a cash cow shifter. I would say it's a butcher, right? It kills your cash cow. And how does it do that? Here's a great example. If you have a mobile plan on your mobile phone, you will eventually stop using SMS. I'm sure you can attest to this. It's not a big deal here. And you will go over the top, OTT, as it says here. And essentially saying, if we have WhatsApp or Viber or 50 others, do you really need to use SMS? The answer is no. If you have a data plan, forget it. Only if the other person doesn't have Viber, which you can arrange for, of course. Now, this means something like $373 million a day is made with SMS. That's what the phone companies are looking at here. Right? Is cash cow dead? So they have to reinvent and find another cash cow, and everybody's looking for that now. So the temptation is to use, for example, social media as such a cash cow, which of course is suicide, because there's no such thing. We have to get used to the fact that these cash cows are dead and not coming back. We'll have to find some goats or sheep or whatever other animal you can think of. For example, the music business is constantly whining about the loss of CD sales. Well, that cash cow, that was just lucky. That's not, you can't say that's my duty to spend that much money on music. Right? So, we all have this vertigo, this angst of, where the next big thing will come from. And Peter Diamandis from the Singularity University says basically that this whole story of what's happening is we're creating an abundance of everything. Data, information, connectivity, social networks. It's mind-boggling how many people we are connected with now and what we can do together. Kickstarter and crowdsourcing and Airbnb, and none of these things look very big today, but just go back 3 days ago. What happened 3 days ago? This guy who has a website organization called Tumblr that you may know, mostly porn and erotic. Well, not that you would know about that, of course, but he sold to Yahoo for a mere $1.1 billion because he's becoming part of the plumbing of abundance. Cloud culture. So cloud culture is really a huge shift for all of us. My medical records in the cloud, my music in the cloud with Spotify, my movies in the cloud, my education in the cloud. I mean, we're talking about lifestyle-changing things that are going to impact all of us. And guess what? People are usually reluctant to talk about Europe as being a leader in this. I think we're in a good position in Europe. I really do. Because we have values. That's a bad thing sometimes, but we do. Right? And we have something to go back on, which is that we don't always want to be the next big thing, like in America. Right? And we also have other things. So we have good things happening in Europe, I think, that can help us with this. But let's be aware. If you're working for a company that's making lots of money because of what Reed Hastings from Netflix calls managed dissatisfaction, a company that is successful because there's really no way around it, nobody's happy with them, right? But you can't really do anything without them, like the railroad companies, for example, or formerly the telecom companies. I mean, you hate those people, basically. And then they're getting better now, but you couldn't get around them. And that was, for example, the entire entertainment industry, right? They just managed our dissatisfaction. We never really liked these guys, but what can we do without them? So Reed says a very interesting sentence. He says, basically, he calls this a managed dissatisfaction system. Traditional entertainment is built on this idea. I take it one step further and say, basically, at this point, anyone, for example, banks, insurance companies, right, governments that are based on saying, we'll kind of massage people a little bit that they won't get angry, but they're not going to add much value. You're not going to be around in the future. If we actually supply customer delight, as Amazon does, that's the whole motto, is customer delight. If you do that, you will be, otherwise you're dead. because people will cut you out. Netflix is a proven point. Look at their growth of revenues. They manage satisfaction. They manage delight, not dissatisfaction. And guess what? The studios hate them for that very reason. That's kind of pathetic, when you think about it. All of the good ideas are hated by those that go back to saying we would like to prefer to manage some sort of friction. Right? So that's not a very good future-proof model. Let's go back to the Internet of Everything. The numbers counted down here. Mind-boggling shifts that are coming with this. Here's a short video kind of showing what we're up against here.
What if the next big thing isn't a thing at all? It's lots of things, all waking up. Becoming part of the global phenomenon we call the Internet of Everything. Trees will talk to networks, will talk to scientists about climate change. Cars will talk to road sensors, will talk to traffic lights about traffic efficiency. The ambulance will talk to patient records, will talk to doctors about saving lives. It's going to be amazing and exciting, and maybe most remarkably.
Why would this matter for you today? This matters as much as if 10 years ago you would have said, you know what, who gives a damn about being first on Google search? Well, it's obvious that we should care. Going forward just a few years from this is going to become part of our everyday life. Thousands of smart little helper agents that fetch information for us. Software agents and, of course, robots as well. Waze, you guys know the app, driving app, Waze, that's what they do. They fetch information for us. They're an agent. Right? Waze is an agent of my desire to go somewhere, and I think Facebook is acquiring them now for that reason. Thousands of those agents around. And here's my friend Spock. He basically shows the way in this rather dated clip here. But now we've got this guy, Paul Andraka, who's 16 years old, who reinvented a way to analyze and diagnose cancer. And he's now competing for the Tricorder Challenge, I think $14 million or so, to build a machine that can has a blood pinpricker that can completely analyze your medical state and transmit that, which is going to change the course of history as much as the printing press. I mean, obviously, I don't think that doctors will be superfluous then, but this device is going to really change a lot of things. And here's another good friend of mine, Schwarzenegger. I'm not quite as muscular as he is, but anyway, he's a nice guy. And so this guy is the Johnny Cap. 2017, I think we're going to see the arrival of this, what was in his last movie, or one of his long-time movies, Total Recall. There's a remake of this now, which is also worth watching. But this is a cab driver that drives the car automatically, and we're going to have this in 2017, except that he won't look like Johnny Cap. It'll just drive. I mean, this all sounds a bit like science fiction, but when we look at these things, the mobility evolutions that we've seen all in the lifetime, from the handheld device to the device that's projected onto your hand, to Google Glass, to the internet on your iris, which already, fighter pilots already have. That's all becoming reality. This has huge economic, social, ethical, and cultural, political implications. This is not something where you can just say, wow, this is going to be great, we're going to make so much money. This has a lot of implications on all levels. It will take collective efforts to actually make this work. You take one example. We're going to expect, or we are already seeing, a $250 billion shift in advertising towards digital, social, interactive video. And if you're not seeing it now, it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. People are very slow to make those changes, especially in countries in Europe. But it's roughly, I think it's about 30% of all advertising is already digital in the US. In Indonesia, for example, mobile advertising is huge. And we're seeing those numbers. If you're in the newspaper business, they're expecting to shrink budgets, newspapers, consumer magazines, radio. I mean, that's not a good outlook here. Looking over here, mobile, social, marketing, social, and all of these things. I mean, that shift is going to really make a vast difference. In 2015, everything around us is going to be ICT, information, communication, technology, everything. Everything will be driven by technology, by big data, by social local mobile intelligence, everywhere, from digital money to connected doctors, to logistics with robots, Google Glass, mind-boggling. And I think this holds a lot of opportunities, not just for the creation of those products, but also for a lot of ancillary services, like a safety band for my identity. I'm not going to participate in this if I'm going to be naked and abused as part of the process. As we had questions this morning, I don't want to be a robot because these guys are robots. So a lot of things have to happen for this business model to actually come out. And that's a great opportunity for a lot of innovation. And another part of that trend is that we're going to see most of the products become services. That's me over here with my Ferrari. You know, now I'm going to be sitting in a self-driving car. I mean, this car isn't a product, it's a service. I mean, can you imagine the top guys at Audi and BMW and Volkswagen and Volvo from earlier today sitting down saying, well, this is not such a good thing for us. You know, this guy was a lot more sexy, obviously, and it made a lot more money for us, but if cars become a service, what in the world are we going to do? So most products become services, that's inevitable. And in this process, we're going from ownership to access. As we have with music, none of you guys, I would bet on now, still buys CDs or even buys iTunes, which is not ownership anyway. It's slavery. But we're going from this trend from saying that we're going to own something to actually that we just take it when we can, and we share it, we rent it, we lease it. We will have public cars, like Copenhagen is already investigating, a fleet of 5,000 self-driving electronic cars ordered through the app, where you can buy a flat rate. The same goes for vacation homes, for airplanes, for all these things. That's a huge shift in economic terms, but also a great opportunity. So the real Godzilla, however, is this one. And it came up several times already today. How are we going to be human in a totally digital society? How are we going to retain what it means to be human? It does not mean to be human because we always want to consume something. I mean, consumption is human, but it doesn't mean that all we have to do is to consume to be human. There are other issues. You know, GDP growth isn't the only measure of success. So we have endless issues here about how we can actually remain human and how we do this. And I think it's also a really amazing opportunity is to figure this out. This interface between machines and people. Because that's what we have right now. If we're looking a little bit further, just a little bit further, our communications are moving from the hand to the brain. And some of these things are extremely scary, of course, but you know, I've just made a short list of this handshake between technology and us. And this is only a short list. I could have used the whole next 5 slides with this, you know, from real-time contextual data, ubiquitous connectivity, location aware, and so on and so on. I mean, you guys know all these things. This is one of the single biggest opportunities for innovation, for entrepreneurship, and for growth in the future. Because what it takes here is to figure out how we're going to interact with technology and what we really want, and how we can actually combine this. The fact is now that mobile devices, sorry, wrong one, mobile devices are now, in fact, our external brain, as Ray Kurzweil says, rightly so. Our mobiles are our brain. You sit down at a bar, you used to talk about cars or women or whatever, right, with a bunch of other guys. What do you do now? You have an argument about the capital of Kazakhstan, you Wikipedia. Right? You look something up. This is our external brain. We can't exist without this brain anymore. We don't know when the train arrives, we don't know our bank accounts, we don't know what happened at home. I mean, we can do all these things now with our mobile devices. They are, in fact, our brain, already. And they're becoming our wallet. They're becoming our access point to data. And if you want to get divorced, you can get a divorce app, you know. It can help you. I mean, it's too late for me. It's already behind me. But in many cases, this is really quite interesting. What we're seeing here is a total convergence. And we've talked about convergence since 1995. It's kind of funny, actually. But now it's really happening. Machines, humans, online. There is no such thing as offline. It doesn't exist anymore. Offline is a mental state. Technically speaking, you can always be online, even on the airplane now, even in the bathroom. 41% of American kids, when they wake up at night, do a Facebook update. I mean, I only do it every second time, but I mean, that behavior change that we're seeing here is deep. And one thing that's happening here to us as humans, and this is why this is relevant to this conference, we're going to need to find some human jobs. I mean, I'm talking about real human jobs. I'm not talking about jobs like, putting an iPad together. 323 people are involved in making an iPad in whatever the cheapest country of the world of the moment is to do that with. Japan, Korea, China, Vietnam, and Greenland eventually. I don't know. But basically what happens here is that if you're looking at this is my own trajectory now in this concept. The green line is traditional human jobs. Marginal jobs, doing stuff, production, manufacturing, scraping data, secretarial services, analysis, all these kind of things. Those jobs will dramatically decline because the red line here is robots, artificial intelligence, and software handling those jobs. If you work for a company where all you do is you analyze data and then you make something out of it to sell a product, for example, hey, machines can do that very nicely. There are many jobs that they can't do yet, but we're going to see the other curve, more interestingly, of course, the only human jobs develop. The only human jobs, of course, are those based on pattern recognition, on emotions, on intuition, on creativity, on all these things that machines can't do until maybe 50 years from now. And then we're in deep trouble. But all of you will be fine before that, So we have this paradigm shift that we're currently facing. To me, this is a fantastic opportunity to reinvent. We're going from this basically industrial age. And this was very much the beginning of the internet. We're going to create something, then we're going to stick something in there, and then somebody's going to throw a coin in and pay us for something. That's basically based on scarcity. We're going to move to a place to where it's much more about creating a network effect of revenues. And if you're looking at the last 5 years of success in business, Amazon, eBay, Skype, Twitter, Tumblr, and so on, right? Basically looking in this direction is quite clear. It's all about network business models. It's not about singular business models. And of course, from there, the turbo model, this paradigm shift that we're going to see. So most of us already are or will be knowledge, creative, and connected workers. In fact, I would say that in 10 years, we're going to get paid not to work, but to goof off and play and experiment. Waste time, as it's called today. We're going to get paid to do that because when we waste time, we can experiment, we can invent something that's going to get the machines to be busy. Creating value does not mean spending lots of time putting stuff together. That's what it used to mean, right? Industrial area mindset. What we need for this, and this is where it gets interesting for marketing, for example, we don't need more smart algorithms. Well, we need those too. I mean, yes, we need those. But what we need is what I call a humorism. Something that's uniquely human because people don't buy stuff because some algorithm tells them to push the click button, the buy button. They buy it because they're attracted to it. It's a magnetism. It's something that happens on a different level, on a fluid, organic level. And if you look at all the trends, the global trends, we're seeing the Maldives are building a new island, allegedly, that's going to be like a giant cruise ship. And in Las Vegas, you can go to the Venetian Hotel, and 68% of Americans are saying they don't go to Venice because they've been to Venice after they've been to the hotel in Las Vegas. Right? I mean, it is mind-boggling. So you could, if you were a pessimist, you could say that, everybody is going to hide under a mountain of bullshit and nothing will be real anymore because of the internet. And there's probably some truth to that as well. But I think in terms of what's happening here is that realness will prevail. Because once we're done with this, it gets boring. I mean, once we've done all these things and we've been to the fake island in the Venetian hotel, we want to look for something real. So for brands, this also means that really what it's all about is that brands need to make sense, not noise. That means that brands and companies are sense makers. They make sense, for example, if you're looking for transportation, there's all different brands providing it, from the airlines to cars to public to Google Car, whatever, and you choose where you get the wisdom, where you get this part that is really important to you. Because here's the thing in the end, with all the data that we're getting every day, this data is increasing in a mind-boggling rate. It's a terabyte every other second or something. Right? Data, information, knowledge, and this pyramid, we get to a place where really what matters is a real intelligence, and that intelligence isn't data. That's not the same thing. That's like saying having a good dinner is an entire ocean full of hamburgers. That's not a good dinner. So brands make sense, not noise. This is really what it comes down to. And this network paradigm shift, that we're seeing right now from 1964, Paul Barron already put this forth. It's a clear shift that we're seeing in our society from centralized to decentralized to distributed in technology, in business models, in revenues. Do you know any companies that are left in this centralized model, apart from maybe the broadcasting companies? Apple, of course. Unfortunately, Apple, the point in the middle fell out, but rest in peace. But now we have a trend, clearly it's obvious, what we're seeing is that we're moving from locked to loose to liquid. If your company is a locked company, it's a death wish in my view. It's survivable, but not by the most. And this is a problem, especially for European companies. Because, we're not fast movers, we're sort of risk averse and all these things, and this is why we don't invest in mobile marketing. Nobody ever got fired for running an ad on television. So this shift is happening now at a mind-boggling speed. Just in the last couple of days, again, Tumblr, liquid. I mean, Tumblr is the best example for being liquid and out of control, basically, you could say. Hotels Tonight, you may know this. Nike, of course, many examples like this. And let's imagine a few new companies that could result from this. A shift. First, I would suggest a uniface, Universal and Facebook, that could come out of this shift, and the Goosang, Google, Samsung, that may be the result of some of these shifts, towards liquidity. I won't comment on TNN, you already know what that is. So the traditional road to money wasn't supposed to be that quick. Traditional road to money. If I got €1 for each client asking me, so yes, so what, but where's the money? I'd be a very rich man. I could give away even more books for free. But looking at this scenario, a lot of people are saying, okay, let's find a roadmap towards money. But here's the reality that we're in. We're living now in a world that is not based on roadmaps. It's based on scaffolds. It's based on interconnected concepts and ideas. We're like in an ecosystem now. And this is a huge shift in terms of business model. It means flexible, resilient, decentralized. And let's be frank, most people hate this idea. I mean, I'm 52. It feels a lot safer to be here, right? On the road to the money. But this is not our future because it's basically topped out. We have done this. We've taken all of these things. So now we have moved to a place, for example, in energy, where it's going to be about distributed energy. Because that's where it's going. With media, same thing, right? So resilient means, in this system, this is, by the way, bamboo, of course, is the most powerful and the most popular building material in Asia. That's what they use to build large buildings. If you take one of those sticks out, the whole thing doesn't fall apart. It's resilient. It works without the stick. When you block the road is dead. You can't go. That's an entirely different scenario. So it has been mentioned today several times what's happening with data. Okay? And I think data is one of those things where we truly have to think about this American Marketing Association quote from 2006, data is the new oil. I won't bore you with this, but it kind of has to be said, just in case you lived under a rock, you have to find out what this means. But if data is actually the new oil, if data is so powerful, for example, today, as the oil companies were until just now, let's hope we learn something from data, from the oil disasters. Because basically what that means, if data is as important as oil, there has to be a public and collective component to the benefit of that data. There has to be a process of give and take. That's what we can learn, I think, from the oil companies. For example, the issue of prediction. I can take your Facebook profile, as the FBI does, 25,000 times a month. I can run it through an algorithm, and I can determine what kind of person you are and what you're going to do, very likely with 90% likelihood. And so I can take this fortune cookie where you are inside, and I can say this person is likely to be a lesbian and get married in Las Vegas next week from your Facebook feed. Right? Let's hope we learn something from this, what this means. Here's a short video.
I used to think my job was all about arrests, chasing bad guys. Now I see my work differently. We analyze crime data, spot patterns, and figure out where to send patrols. It's helped some U.S. cities cut serious crime by up to 30%. By stopping it before it happens. Let's build a smarter planet.
Yeah, well, is this kind of planet actually smarter? Or is it just more of a police state? Yeah. So those are issues that we have to solve, clearly. I mean, this is inevitable. It's not that we have a choice for that to happen or not. But we have this shift of data, and I think this is very important if you're in the business of marketing or if you're in the business of brand building. There's three spheres of data. One is volunteered, information that we give voluntarily, for example, with Google. The second one is observed. By observing public posts on Facebook, we can sort of observe a person. So if you like a brand on Facebook, they can observe you, and they can give you offerings, and they give you coupons, and those things are quite cool, as we've seen many times, for example, Starbucks. But the last one is the important one, inferred. This has taken all the data that we have created and putting into an algorithm and saying, asking a question to the algorithm, deduct it from my data. And when you use Google Now, which I'll show in a second what that is, a service that automatically feeds you relevant content, this is what they do. They infer data, other data from your current data. So they make suggestions. I think this is a very, very powerful tool, rightly used. And this is going to be the future of marketing. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think there's a lot of things that we have to solve for this to work, but imagine the kind of thing that we can do here, having a direct feed of data from our television, from our Facebook, our social media that we provide in return for getting just the perfect fit of information and offers. This could be a nightmare for consumers in terms of privacy if it goes out of control, but also sort of a nirvana for shopping. You've heard about Google Now? Should I? Okay, I'll give you a brief thing on this, but basically what Google Now is doing, and I'll show a short clip, is taking all our personal data, our permissions, our knowledge, the location, and creating a prediction mechanism, and giving us data without being asked. Have some sound?
Information you need throughout your day. All that information is ready at the exact moment you actually need it. Introducing Google Now. Now with Android, one simple swipe gives you the information that is relevant to you, right now. As you leave your house, Google Now is smart enough to check current traffic conditions and has prepared an alternate route for your commute. Google Now is always one step ahead, so you can feel more confident as you...
Well, you can watch this on YouTube, but as a marketer, you want predictive powers. Let's be honest, right? You want to be able to say, my target group is here. This is where I get the best investments. I mean, the entire marketing industry globally, marketing, advertising, and public relations and assorted spamming, they're roughly $1 trillion. $1 trillion are spent on reaching us. So this is going to be a very big shift in this regard. I think something that we can think about. I think the scary part is when you're looking in this direction, is the difference between Facebook and Google, for example, is that Facebook knows what we say when we make an update. Say, we've been in Amsterdam, it was great. You know, that's kind of straightforward. But Google knows what we think because we're looking for things. When we're looking for anti-fungus nail cream, you know, Google knows we've got a problem of some sort. They can use that information to get inside of our head, and they are using that. Don't get me wrong. In general, I don't think there's much wrong with this because that's the deal that we've made. But it does have to be at a point to where we can decide what that deal is on a regular basis, without getting very much inside, without having that right. So the future is going to be contextual search and contextual everything. Contextual means that the search already knows who you are and what you want, and you just fine-tune it or you don't do anything. It just comes to you. That's a substantial difference. Basically, most technologies that we use to direct, like television or media or search, will start conducting themselves. Okay? Basically, using the information that we have provided is providing things like Google Maps and other things, and the Nike shoes and all these kind of things. I mean, if you're wearing the Nike wristband and you're sharing your running information, Nike can send you specific offers because they have the data, if you opt in. What does this mean for marketing? Basically, it means, straightforwardly speaking, if you don't get permission, you're not going to get anywhere. It's all about permission. And how do you get permission by somebody? Not by threatening them. You have to get permission from people. It's like when you have a dinner with your kids, and you say, well, tonight all we're going to talk about is Amsterdam. They will not be so excited that you dictate the conversation. Giving permission means you talk about other things, whatever is relevant to them. So having permission by consumers is becoming ultimately the goal of all these things that we're going to see in the future that are already here today. So today, we are searching. Tomorrow, we are being searched. Being searched in the sense of receiving the search data as we are here. Sought out is a better word. Yeah. Being searched sounds sort of police-like, but being sought out. And this opportunity for marketing and advertising is gigantic if we don't screw it up. Because clearly, you know, there are many opportunities. So the past is searching for something, the future is information seeking us. And this has a lot to do with the Internet of Things and all these things that we discussed before, but this is only about 3 years away. I'm not talking about science fiction here. Everything that we do becomes dynamic, real-time, social, mobile, local, fluid, and predictive. Everything. Now again, I'm not saying that some of that wouldn't necessarily not be scary. It definitely is. But we're going to have to really collaborate between the marketers and the product companies and the R&D people and tech people and the governments to actually figure out what the rules for this are. This is where we're at right now. And this is not just us here, the rich people in Europe. This is 5 billion people that are connected to mobile networks on cheap devices that cost $10. I mean, imagine when that happens, all hell will break loose. You think it's complicated now, just wait until all those people get online. It's going to be huge. So in order for any of this to work, we need a gigantic opt-in. Permission. If we all say, you know what, we don't want to opt in because we're worried about you guys, and we're worried about providing information, and we're closing down, then $1 trillion turns into zero. There won't be any advertising or marketing if we don't allow it, because in this system we can kill it. There's a big difference between Microsoft and Facebook or Google, for example. We didn't have a choice but to use Microsoft because, you know, people were sending us stuff and we couldn't open it. We couldn't get outside of these empires. But today, if we agree that Facebook is messing with us and abusing our trust, if we agree, 3 months, stock zero. And this, of course, is the issue with their stock. But we need gigantic opt-ins. And because of this idea of what's happening with marketing, you know, that we say this is what's called likeonomics, you know, this idea of being liked. You know, most marketers think of Facebook and, you know, basically of a permission to spam you. That is past. So we're going to change to a system where we also need to start thinking about what that means when we do this. We need to consider the social implications of this. becoming transparent in such a way where the light shines everywhere. Also, the other thing is, of course, if you look at what's happening now with mobile marketing, we'll never be successful with mobile marketing if we do this, basically say, okay, we're going to use the information provided to be a nuisance. I mean, this whole idea of interruption, disruption, and making a victim out of people that want to buy things, I mean, this idea is utterly flawed, obviously. It's going to kill the golden goose. Here's another golden goose idea. You'll be amazed this is actually already here. Get some light, some sound? Yeah, we get some sound? Yeah, is the button on the right?
Tastes great and it's full of good things like antioxidants, but how much pleasure does it actually give us? We're aiming to create the first ever measure of pleasure.
The way we're going to achieve the measure of pleasure is by taking 80 participants through a series of pleasurable experiments using portable EEG equipment, which allows us to see what's going on inside their brains through the prefrontal cortex on the front of the brain. One of the things that's really important for us in this experiment is to create a true linear measure for pleasure. And in order to get a linear measure, it's very important to understand a baseline. And to get a true baseline, sometimes you need to feel a bit of pain.
Oh, I'm out.
So here's a company that is going to look with electronic means is to measure how much pleasure you experience, and primarily, of course, with eating and drinking. So their goal is to say that this candy bar has a pleasure score of 72. This is why you should buy this one and not the other. Right? This is the marketing idea behind it. So this kind of shows you what's happening with technology taking over this thinking of everything is an algorithm, and we're just there to receive it. Good luck with that. The question is, to me, that comes to mind when I look at these things, do we really need more intelligent marketing just to create the next generation of human consumption machines? In other words, we're going to have more smart stuff because then we can consume more and create more GDP. If that isn't a robot, I don't know what is. I mean, what is the marketing of the future going to be if it's not going to be about this data? And there's a great book that just came out by Doc Searles called The Intention Economy, where he talks about what's happening with the attention economy, which I'm sure you've heard about plenty, becoming now the way of saying that if somebody intends to do something, again, sort of anticipation, prediction, same idea, right? Is that we have a way of showing our intention and then getting offers. So reversing the process. Right now, commerce is seller-oriented, is what Doc Searles is saying. The future of buying and selling is going to be buyer-focused. Focus on the consumer, not the seller. This is e-commerce, huge business is going to change in this direction. And I think one thing that we have to make sure, of course, is that we also must retain places like this where prediction isn't available. And this is the constant back and forth, I think, between the systems that we're going to see, also ways to opt out. And don't get me wrong on this, I think it's important to opt in and be part of it because that's the deal that we made with a lot of these platforms, and that's a deal we should also honor and construct. But we also have to be able to say, you know what, this deal is not what I want anymore, I'm going to opt out and move into a different direction. And my view is that we're also going to start looking at issues around this, and we basically have the power of technology now in our hands that is comparable to nuclear power. But our responsibility level is on an infant level with this. So that needs to catch up in many ways. We need to look in this direction and see what happens. We've made a lot of Faustian bargains, deals with the devil, so to speak. And again, here I would say, the Faustian bargain I have with Google, it's okay. I'm getting a lot of services and they read my email and, it's a little bit creepy sometimes, but okay, it's an okay deal. But that deal has to also be looked at from the other angle, as we discussed this morning. It may be so good that I get addicted to it. So in other words, if I don't have my external brain, I feel like I'm not alive. And that we don't want. I think that's something we're going to have to think about a lot in the future. It's a love-hate relationship between us and the users of our data. And we don't have a choice of saying, you know, we're not going to let people use our data. That is the economy. I mean, it's the same as saying, you know what, you're not going to get any oil. Same thing. We can't function without oil or with other energies today, and we can't function without data in the future. And that's why we need to also be very careful about how we market to people in a different way than the spam that we used to create. So the bottom line is this. In a world like this, that we had until just 2 or 3 years ago, captive customers. You know, many of you are in marketing, and in marketing we tend to use military language, you know, campaigns and targets and implementation and annihilation and, you know. Captive customers, the future is going to be quite different. Here's a clip about captive customers. I'm wrapping up soon. There's no sound on this. So yeah, this is what happened to the mouse. But I didn't want to show you the scene where the mouse gets squashed. And another funny thing is I had to take the music out, which was really great rock and roll songs, because when you have the music on YouTube, your video gets thrown out. This is pathetic, of course, but anyway. 5 billion people, consumers, will push back when we apply this kind of marketing to them. It's not going to work. If you planning your advertising to be based on captivity and all the military terms that we used in the past, it's not going to work. We're moving from this idea of mousetraps to the idea of magnets. You want to stake your future on one thing is be a magnet. I mean, this is where all of the success comes from. Companies, individuals, people, software. And it's hard to be a magnet because you have to give something. You have to actually radiate something. A likely future because of this is also going to be paying for privacy. Because, you know, sometimes I may say, you know what, the deal is no longer really Faustian good. I get out and I just pay. Like app.net has launched, you know, with a paid Twitter-like service and others. We're going to see a lot of those platforms, you know, paying for privacy. So a quick summary, and then hopefully we have time for some questions before we enter here the Dutch drinking ceremony. Point number 1, business as usual is dead. What this means is that we're not going to go back to what it was. We're not going to go back to the economic bubble that was here before all of these things happened. We're not going to go back to that system of customers being captive. That is gone. We're going to turn our entire marketing and our branding into being magnets, like most of the companies that have understood this, like the Volvo presentation earlier, is about that. It's about being attractive, about being pulled in. We need to eradicate managed dissatisfaction. Look at your company and find out where are the points where we are managing people because we know they're pissed off, we don't want to lose them, we do a little bit something, but we don't change anything. There's like 50 of those points. That will kill you. We cannot have that in the future. Today's changes are exponential. Prediction and anticipation. This is the tool of marketing in the future. It's the tool in general, of course, that is fed by data. A clear direction of where the future is going towards liquid, intelligence, wisdom, everything becoming dynamic, real-time, social, local. Information seeking us. This is a fundamental shift that we're going to see in the next few years play out. Humor rhythms, that's really what we need. We need to understand how this works with people, not with robots. Sometimes not having the prediction will also be a good thing. So thanks very much for your time. You can go to gerdcloud.com, which is a fancy name for Dropbox. It's a shortcut into Dropbox where you can download all of my presentations. I'll put this up tonight. And of course, futuristgerd.com will have the PDF sometime tomorrow as well. And I do hope to get